Hey everyone, welcome back to the Unusual Critics. I'm Debord, and today we are talking about Christopher Nolan, Karl Marx, and the illusion of modern art cinema. So let me preface this by saying that Christopher Nolan is my favorite filmmaker working today. I started my own filmmaking career because I was so inspired by watching Interstellar, and I truly consider him as one of the goats of cinema. But recently, looking at his trajectory from Tenet to Oppenheimer to the massive 2026 release of the Odyssey, we are witnessing a fascinating case study. Hollywood is effectively manipulating the 20th century myth of art cinema. We all know Nolan's greatest achievement. He works under the massive studio infrastructure while maintaining his artistic integrity. He guarantees audience footfall just by his name, as the internet loves to point out. Christopher Nolan is an IP in himself. But that's just a surface level reading of a wider phenomenon at work. If we actually dissect this, Christopher Nolan isn't just an IP. He is the final form of Karl Marx's end-stage capitalism. Think about how Hollywood usually works. The studio system has always been dependent on the ensemble cast to pull the crowd, hence the floating head posters. Now Nolan's films showcase this massive ensemble cast more than ever. Just look at the roster for the Odyssey. But his films don't actually rely on the star power. The star power here is Nolan, yes, but a deeper study reveals that the real star power here is the idea of artistically liberated cinema. See, Nolan's films are the epitome of art to the modern blockbuster audience, but we often misidentify the definition of art cinema. Historically, art cinema wasn't just a characteristic definition for movies that look pretty or push the medium. It was a highly political, context-driven terminology used to identify alternative, anti-establishment cinema. But today, the binary between art and mainstream cinema has never been thinner. The historical tendencies of so-called art cinema are exactly what's mainstream now. We can go even further to say that the festival films of today are no longer the historical definition of art cinema. They are mainstream art films, spreadsheet-driven, formulaic, and hyper-calculated for profit. Nolan's screenplays might not be written by a corporate committee or an algorithm, but the way the film is sold to you absolutely is. The art might be original, but the commodity is mass-produced. Now, all of this might seem bleak for the future of filmmaking, but if we study film history, it's actually a natural, predictable trajectory for the medium. To understand the commercialization of the auteur, we have to look at how the term was coined in the first place. This brings us back to the French nouvelle vague, the New Wave. In the 1950s, writers at Cahiers du Cinéma like Truffaut, Godard, and Chabrol created the magazine essentially as propaganda. They wanted to point out the stagnation in French cinema, present themselves as the brilliant alternatives, and ultimately fund their own films. Despite this parasitic mindset, they presented their essays with sheer academic brilliance in the space of criticism, masking their youthful arrogance. But they had a hurdle to prove the auteur really existed. They had to find them in places you would least expect, that is, mainstream Hollywood. So they reverse engineered the idea. They defined an auteur by two factors: signature style and control over the medium. They pointed to the psychological tracking shots of Alfred Hitchcock or the wide, sweeping landscapes of John Ford, and articulated that these directors had maintained their artistic vision inside the corporate hellscape of American production. Hollywood was hyper aware of this. When the studio system started failing in the 1970s, when audiences stopped buying tickets for just the studio's logo or the leading man, the system pivoted. They made the director the star. Thus came the birth of the title A Film Bite, with its first massive success being the first true summer blockbuster, Steven Spielberg's Jaws. Now Nolan operates exactly like Hitchcock did, maintaining individuality within the studio machine. But to call Nolan an auteur through this historical definition set by the Cahiers writers is inaccurate. His authorship is an entirely industrial construct. The capitalist structure is now taking its next big step, where the very concept of true cinema is the primary driver of profit. Let me give you an example. I watched the Odyssey in IMAX, widely marketed as the way Nolan intended. Now a friend of mine watched it in normal 2D in a single screen theater. His ticket price was like 5 times lower than mine, and he told me that even though he had watched the film, he felt guilty. He felt like he didn't truly watch the film because he saw it in a cheap theater. The studio system has successfully convinced the audience that if you aren't paying a premium to watch a film in an expanded ratio, you're watching the wrong film. The more money you pay, the better the film you're watching. But why did my friend feel guilty for watching the film in 2D? That's where Pierre Bourdieu's concept of cultural capitalism comes in. Bourdieu says that our taste in art isn't just personal preference, it's a social weapon used to establish class status. Knowing that you should watch the Odyssey in IMAX is a form of cultural capital. The studio knows that the film nerds want to flex their superior taste, so they weaponize it. They take your cultural capital, your knowledge of aspect ratios and practical effects, and they convert it directly into their economic capital by charging you $30 a ticket to prove that you are a real fan. Now, this is exactly what Karl Marx warned us about in his theory of commodity fetishism. In Marxist theory, a commodity has two values: a use value, like the actual utility, like experiencing a story, and the exchange value, where it trades for in the market, driven by social perception. Under capitalism, the exchange value completely eclipses the use value. You are no longer just buying a movie ticket to see a story, but you are buying the prestige, the format, the ideological signifier of pure cinema. The IMAX format becomes fetishized. French philosopher Jean Baudrillard calls this a simulacrum, a manufactured hyper-reality where the true cinematic experience is a fabricated ideal used to command a higher price. What the studios are doing with Nolan cinema is artificially injecting what philosopher Walter Benjamin calls the aura back into the mass media. Benjamin argued that reproducing art strips away its unique, almost sacred presence. So how does Hollywood fix that? By telling you that the only true way to experience the Odyssey is in its one of the 30 70mm IMAX theaters worldwide. They aren't just selling a movie ticket, they're selling a pilgrimage. They are manufacturing a physical aura out of the digital mass-produced commodity just to charge you a premium. Now, the concept of this fabricated true cinema doesn't stop at the box office. The fundamental act of cinephilia itself has been capitalized. Think about the marketing cycles now. You are rewarded for knowing all the film formats the Odyssey is shown in. You are rewarded for watching the behind-the-scenes documentary of the film's practical effects released a whole week before the film even hits the theaters. You are trained to show yourself as a niche art cinema appreciator by aggressively supporting a $250 million blockbuster. As cultural theorist Theodor Adorno pointed out in his critique for the cultural industry, capitalism is incredibly efficient at absorbing its own opposition. We are brainwashed to believe we are participating in an alternate film culture, when in reality, the niche is the mainstream, the individualization is the mainstream, the intertextuality is the mainstream, and the art is the mainstream. This brings us to Guy Debord's Society of the Spectacle. Debord argued that capitalism eventually replaces actually lived realities within the representations of reality. The spectacle isn't just the explosion on the screen, it's a social relation between you and your friends debating the sound mixing on Letterboxd. The film itself doesn't matter anymore. The events of the film, the memes, the behind-the-scene talks, the arguments about practical effects is the actual spectacle. We are consuming the discourse, not the art. Now, this theory extends beyond just the directors of the film. The aura of the auteur is now a tradable corporate asset, licensed out to legitimize other projects. Just look at Martin Scorsese serving as the executive producer for the 2025 film Homebound, or look at the massive global fanfare surrounding Hans Zimmer, the sonic architect of the Nolan brand, stepping in to co-score the upcoming pan-world epic Ramayana. Are they involved because of the talent? Absolutely, but from an industrial standpoint, the studios are buying their cultural capital. Zimmer's involvement in Ramayana isn't just about his music, it's a branding exercise to signal to a global audience that this isn't just a regional epic, it's a Nolan-scale prestige event. The auteur is no longer just a filmmaker. The auteur is a franchise tag used to validate massive commercial ventures as high art. Now, am I saying that all this makes the Odyssey a bad film? No, I genuinely think it's one of the best movies of the year. My point here is not to demean Nolan or the art he creates. The point is simply to point out the capitalistic power at work and to be aware of the waters we are swimming in. Karl Marx believed in dialectic materialism, the idea that historical progress happens through contradictions. When the system absorbs its opposition, the tension forces a new reality. If we look at historical trends, this extreme commercialization of the auteur has to eventually hit a ceiling. As art cinema becomes entirely absorbed by the multi-million-dollar mainstream, true alternative cinema will have to evolve. It will likely move away from the director as god myth entirely, perhaps pushing towards decentralized, collective, or radically new terminological form of storytelling that the studio system cannot immediately commodify. Nolan is a master of his craft. Nolan isn't a sellout. He is playing the ultimate game of high-stakes leverage. He uses their money to protect his art, and they use his name to protect their stock price. thus making him a masterclass in how capitalism perfectly packages rebellion and sells it back to us in 70mm. The irony is that Nolan thinks he is fighting end-stage capitalism by pushing back against the tech monopolies of Netflix and streaming. He views the theatrical experience as sacred, but to save that sacred experience, he has had to turn it into a luxury commodity, a $30 IMAX ticket, pushing the working class out of the true cinematic experience entirely. So thanks for watching, keep criticizing, keep analyzing, and I will see you in the next one.